As you may know, yesterday a few articles were published that were interviews with Miyazaki. And there was one on Famitsu, which is a Japanese game magazine, and one on IGN. Some people were saying it's the same interview. It does not seem the same, or maybe they chose to transcribe different parts of the interview. They discuss different things. They both discuss very relevant and interesting things. So I'm going to discuss the contents of both of those interviews as we go through this. Also, I've spent a lot of time in other people's streams in the past couple days. I've spent a lot of time in G9 stream. I've spent a lot of time in a little bit of time in Saint Riots, a little bit of time talking to people in Golden Teacher's stream, engaging people's reactions. I heard Nash's reaction to it. So we have a little bit of a basis of community reaction and a little bit of basis of the hype that's surrounding this currently. So the first thing that I think is very cool is that the community was correct in predicting that the starting point would likely be Michaelis Cocoon. So right off the bat, let's address the idea or the premise of this, which is both a gaming premise as well as a story premise. And that premise is the idea that there is a sort of fallen world or an inverted world, a second dimension, if you will, that is related to and reflected on the other side of the lands between. This is confirmed in the interviews with Miyazaki. He mentions it in both of them. And he talks about how, in the IGN interview specifically, he talks about he mentions it in both. So I think that it's weird. They left certain parts out of the IGN interview or something, but he talks about the influence that George R.R. Martin had on the DLC. And while he doesn't say that, he was working directly during its development, he does talk about the way that the mythology of the world of Elden Ring, as constructed by George R.R. Martin, influenced the DLC in the same way or a similar way to the way that it influenced the original game. So what that means is that this Shadowland that we are seeing here with the tree and the crazy gravestones and everything like that is a part of the overall mythology and the overall construction of the story of the world of Elden Ring, although it was not really revealed or discussed much in the original game. And people will talk about that quite a bit, I suspect. But basically, there are some things that we haven't seen or that have been slow rolled. And this is kind of consistent with From Software's other DLC in some ways. In some of them, there's only like allusions or very, very small bits and pieces to lead us towards the, idea of where the DLC or what it will be, what kind of other world we'll be exploring or seeing. But I think it is interesting to note that part of the influence of this is from George R.R. Martin. So it's a new map entirely, which many of us suspected. They're not filling in any part of the other map or anything like that. So let's move on. Okay, so this is obviously, I think, a Great Rune. And if you know, the mythology of Elden Ring, the Great Runes create, an image that is the Elden Ring, right? It's this sort of image concept that represents this cosmological construction, and that has been shattered. Okay, that's, the very basic background of the story there. But this is interesting because if you look at the Elden Ring picture, or the picture of the completed ring, this is not a part of it. All the other Great Runes are. So what this means is that there is a piece of the Elden Ring missing, or that there's a Great Rune that has somehow been hidden or somehow disconnected from the other part of the world. And I believe that this ties into one of the bosses that we will see very soon. So, as for an in-game thing, the idea of a new Great Rune has been discussed a lot. People have often wondered, you know, they thought maybe it would be Miquella's Great Rune, someone's Great Rune. There's been debate about what it would be, maybe Godwin's, but that's interesting because this represents something for the game, some gameplay mechanic. PvP hopefuls might say that this could be something having to do with PvP, but, you know, it'll give you some kind of in-game power like all the Great Runes do. Unfortunately, rune arcs can only be used by hosts, not by invaders. You know, this might not have much of an effect on PvP other than, you know, hosts will have a different kind of bonus that they can have. But I think that there's a good question if this could be on the level of like Morgoth's or Radahn's or Godric's in the early game, or if this will be something more like Malenia's or Rykard's on the power level and usefulness. I do think that it's interesting to think about what a more powerful Great Rune than the ones they already implemented would be, but I don't really want that in the game, so because it'll make invasions even worse than they already are, but that's okay. Let's move on. Cool new armor set. People have discussed that a lot. You know, these 3 armor sets, keep in mind that every single piece of armor, gear, weapon, ability that we see is going to be something we can find in the DLC. And so, you know, that's interesting. The frame with this castle, these are all obviously new areas, but we have, okay, it's Poison Swamp, Miyazaki Poison Swamp. That castle looks epic. That might be a legacy dungeon. I think that there's going to be more than one quote-unquote legacy dungeon. I think Shaded Castle and Castle of Morning are considered to be legacy dungeons, or not legacy dungeons, but I mean, I think they are, but they kind of aren't. But I think there might be a few places like that, but that looks like a rather substantial area right there. I mean, as we know, we'll be able to probably explore every single part of this. So, yeah, look at that sky. There's something gnarly going on in that world for sure. Is this the part of the Shadow Erdtree hanging over this? It's very foreboding. Everything's very dark. Okay, a lot of things going on. So they show you 3 things there. First is this crazy boss with the Wicker Man boss or whatever, Fire Giant 2, and of course confirmed by Miyazaki. These are a bunch of corpses that are in here burning. You know, the remains. He said we're fueling it. So, you know, that's pretty fun. We've got the weird snake thing, which Miyazaki also said is somehow connected to the world of Shadow. He didn't want to spoil what that was, but this looks like maybe some kind of creature that was somehow mutated from something else, from a tarnish maybe, or I don't know on that one. And then we get to this thing, okay, which I'm kind of scared. This boss, honestly, I do not like this. It looks really frightening, this kind of crazy lion. But it is my, I mean, I think that this is a very reasonable guess. This is my suspicion that this is a shadow of one of the Empyreans, although which one, and it may be the shadow of Mesmir. So that's something I was thinking about. It's odd to me because this very clearly looks like maybe it even has some sort of, like, you know, this hide or this outfit that's covering this boss's body. It kind of reminds me of Geraint and the way that Geraint's clothing covers Malekith's real identity, but is this a face or a mask? I mean, I can't really tell, but it seems like there might be more going on here. So this might be a boss that has a phase that reveals something even more insane than what's already. I mean, look at that. Under it, it's got so many limbs and joints, and like where its head is coming out of its crotch. I mean, I have no idea what's going on here. So this thing is clearly some very difficult boss. This might be one of the mega hard bosses. In the IGN interview, Miyazaki addressed the difficulty of the bosses in the DLC and talked about the way some of them would be of a similar difficulty to Millennia, some of them would be of a similar difficulty to some of the other hard bosses in the end game. But he did say that the hardest bosses, the super tough bosses, are optional, which is fairly typical. So I'm guessing that the final DLC boss will be something, you know, maybe along the lines of Radagon or Elden Beast, maybe Godfrey Horlu. And then there will be another one or maybe two bosses that are the super bosses. I think there's a question about which of those we've seen here in this video. This guy may be the end boss of the DLC, but would they reveal that this early? Or does this guy's downfall lead to some other question or path or thing that we haven't seen or that we don't know about yet? I think that is a large question hanging in the air. This guy's Great Spear is obviously super cool, and I mean, is it going to be Moog 2.0? Do we have a a new PvP all-star? They have never truly nerfed Great Spears overall as a weapon class, other than, you know, nerfing the damage overall somewhat. So adding more good Great Spears is very cool for the game. But yeah, I don't think it'll necessarily help to dethrone their dominance in the PvP scene, but that's all right. That old PvP scene. So I know that this guy is probably America's child. I don't know how that all connects, why he's in this world, why we don't know anything about him in the first game. A lot of people are talking about how the smoldering butterfly is related to him, but there's also a lot of questions about how he's related to Melina. Is Melina America's child? Is America Melina America, Millennia, Godfrey, and Horlu? Nobody actually really knows, of course, because this is brand new, but I would suspect that that guy is going to be probably pretty tough to fight. We'll see. They don't really show, maybe they do show one or two of his moves at the end, but... And then of course, we've heard some discussion about this. Miyazaki says that there's going to be 8 different weapon types, and that there's this monk weapon, there's this fist weapon. These are he said a reverse sword or like some kind of paracurve sword, but this moveset is really unique. We've never seen it. This is confirmed to be a new weapon class of throwing daggers. A lot of people are saying that that might be too good and that that'll suck, you know, in ganks and stuff like that. I really fail to see how those will be that different from the current projectile spam we have. We already have all of these glintstone shards, different kinds of throwing daggers, consumables, etc. So, I mean, if you can deal with those sorts of things now, that's not a new meta, I guess is my point. What I was going to talk about is that, you know, like maybe this thing could break PvP. Maybe it won't, but we won't know which things will actually be successful. That's something that they should have tuned on a lot of the spells more, I think, is increased stamina FP usage. I'm just saying, is that really that different than spell spamming, like being in a gank with 2 mages? I don't know. But this, yeah, true. He does get Stunlock. The skeleton gets Stunlocked there. This thing looks kind of cool. It could be powerful. I think it's an incantation because no staff. It's holding a seal. Yeah, it might. A lot of the spells deal a lot of stun though. Yeah, we still have Endure. there's things that you can use to deal with those sorts of setups. But yes, I appreciate your perspective. I don't know for sure. Like, people think like these kicks are going to be broken. I mean, maybe not. Is kicking someone in the head good? Maybe it is. Maybe it gives you like tons of poise. I think that's probably an Ash of War that character is doing. Maybe not a normal move, because it seems to be a little fancy to be just like a regular R1. I guess it could be like some kind of R2 or something, but I don't know how those physical moves, the martial arts moves, will affect the way that the PvP works. That'll be interesting. That's kind of what I'm thinking it will be, is that it's going to be it's going to be an Ash of War that gives you poise and it hits all of the hits. I think it might be easy mode in that way. I'm not sure yet, but I'm kind of scared of that. Like, I think it makes sense to have like a foot weapon or like a kick weapon, because you have fists, so like that's kind of an interesting dynamic. But if it's something where the kicks just poise break every time, that seems kind of busted. Yeah, that'll be fun. I think that'll be fun to try, for sure. And as we know, there's 8 new weapon species, which is quite a lot, and there will be, you know, several of each of those. So we're talking about adding, I think, probably, you know, 150 weapons to the game. So it's going to make the overall complexities of the PvP interactions increase even more, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's going to be really cool and interesting. It's going to be broken as hell, though. Everything's going to be busted. Yeah, maybe. It really depends on who's punching, I think. But yeah, it's possible that the kick would do more. These things will just be fun. I mean, they might be really good, but there's a lot of things like this in the game already. Some like big, huge Ash of War or spell that's really, really hard to pull off if someone's looking at you, but they work well as like an ambush, or, you know, having high ground and throwing that. If it's a big enough area of effect, if the hitbox is big enough, those could be good in certain situations. You know, if you're standing on top of a ladder, or, you know, if you can get the high ground on someone, you know, use Endure, throw one of those pots down on them, maybe they can really mess you up, and maybe they'll make the jar builds better. A lot of people like the jar helmet and they wear the jar tally, but they're not very, I don't know, those builds aren't that powerful right now, so I don't know, maybe that will give those something, especially in invasions. Everybody knows about this guy. The crazy new lap armor is what everyone's saying. Seems like nice fan service armor made specially for G9, I guess. So, I mean, immediately right off the bat, if you wear this armor, you will be considered a G9 clone, apparently. We also have this cool bear. I think the bear looks kind of neat, mostly because it has 2 hitboxes, and both of them seem to last quite a long time. Could be a really good get off me tool and pretty effective against groups. Railroad's Roar is very, very good, actually, and it has a lot of different uses in invasion, so having maybe an upgraded version of that could be good. Of course, maybe being locked in that animation for a long time will be terrible against all the new projectile stuff, but that also might allude to other kinds of breath, or not, like maybe new dragon spells. Of course, maybe I think they'll have 1 or 2 of those, but a different, you know, different creatures doing different stuff, like maybe a bird beak biting you, or like a giant mosquito stinger coming out and stings ya. Yeah, that's a good take, and I do think that this looks PvP-esque. It's very wide open, and has a cool, you know, a couple of cool features to it. It's got a little bit of cover, and it does have some elevation, but there's also flat areas but those flat areas look like they have water, so, you know, lightning build OP. Still OP. So yeah, that looks cool. And then of course we see here these weapons that she's using are different than the ones that guy in the other part is using, I'm pretty sure. She's using some like dancing curved swords. So those look like some paired curved swords. And then the other ones I think are the like reverse swords, I think Miyazaki called them in the interview. These ones. I can actually load. Yeah. That looks like a different move set to me. But maybe they're part of the same class of weapon, but they're a different version of it, and they have some unique move sets, which is really cool. I like when weapons have unique movesets or unique things about their moveset in this game. Things like Tree Spear or like, I don't know, like Morning Star with like the thrust attacks. There's some weird, cool movesets in this game that make weapons really fun and unique and interesting to use. This thing, okay. This, right, maybe there will be a boar furry attack. Well, this might be an enemy though, right? Like, I don't know if we're going to be able to ride the boar. Okay, I thought that this was a great sword every time I watched it yesterday, but now I agree it does look like a lance. Because of the handle, it looks like a lance handle. And I do have to say, everybody's been super hype about this. I am not very hype about this. 2 new great spears, both probably, I mean, they'll be somber weapons. So actually that makes them in some ways worse for PvP. I mean, the reason why everybody uses lances for PvP is because of the flexibility of having, you know, Endure or Bloodhound Step, you know, or Storm Assault, which are the only 3 Ashes of War in the game. And yeah, right. Well, actually, I don't think the Ash will necessarily be Ash. Gravity Ash of Wars actually are pretty uniformly good. Like, not great, but Gravitas is good. The Radon Ash of War has a lot of really unique niche cases that you can use it for in invasions. You can pull and push people with it. It's one of the only things that can access people who are directly above you. There's also the Rune's Greatsword Ash of War. Waves of Destruction is quite strong. It has basically infinite hyper armor and a ton of range and deals insane damage. And you can free aim it, so you can predict someone's roll. But yeah, I don't know. It could be bad. It would be, in a way, it would be better if the Ash was bad, because that would balance the fact that it's a lance, but we'll see. Most likely a strength int weapon, of course. And the boar, I have no idea what the boar is telling us, to be honest. I have no clue what that's saying. Maybe just an enemy, but we'll see on that. Okay, I'm gonna keep going a little bit here. But yeah, that'll obviously be busted, but it doesn't look super long, so if that's a great spear, it maybe doesn't have a ton of reach. This hippo is clearly some kind of, maybe, yeah, like an open world boss. Yeah, that would be cool. Maybe you can cut off its head and wear it as armor. Okay, so now this. I don't know if you all saw, there were some pictures that were also released. There's a picture of the Tarnish and the Raging Wolf armor doing this move. So this is some kind of boss that gives you a spell or an Ash of War. Maybe it's aspect of Crucible Porcupine. That's what I think. But it's a hippo, so I'm confused. Frosty was going crazy about this, saying that he thinks that this will be a weapon we can get, which, yes, may be correct. And in that case, would it be a boomerang? Also, one thing I just noticed is that if you saw that picture of the little worm guy against the purple background, this guy has like the same face as that, I think. So maybe that's a special area or dungeon, and this is the boss of that dungeon. But also, that boss's arena looks kind of like the Big Deer, the Moose Arena. Or yeah, or something like that. It's like a big, open, huge arena. So maybe you get teleported to that arena. It kind of from Elden Ring, the arena reminds me of is the dragon guys, not dragons, but God, I can't remember what those guys are called. Dragonkin, the Dragonkin, Noxtella Dragonkin or whatever. Reminds me of that arena, like big ass open arena. So I'm guessing you're gonna have to like run around a lot in that fight. One thing I also noticed here, they don't show any spirit ashes in this trailer, which is kind of interesting. Maybe there's a decreased emphasis on those. That of course is going to be a weapon, but whether or not the guy's head is going to be on the weapon, I think is a good question. And then yeah, so now we have this part, Mesmir or whatever. Mesmir is the lost child of America and Radagon, everybody is saying. Okay, they do show his move. That's cool. It looks like a jump, like a dragon jump. That looks like Storm Assault. That looks like Storm Assault. If you want to talk about a new Storm Assault, that one looks seriously like Storm Assault. He looks badass. He looks scary. You know, looks kind of skinny, but it looks like he's really tall. He got a lot of power. Man, can't wait to die to that thing 500 times. These bosses are going to be easy, so easy. Not even going to be an issue. So he almost looks like lava. People have drawn the association to Rykard and Volcano Manor. I think it's very, very clear that it is a similar, or it's a related character. Maybe somehow also exiled or related to the Serpent God. People have also indicated that there's some sort of dragon symbols on him as well, so tying together different parts of the storyline between Volcano Manor and like the ancient dragon civilization, because people are saying the spears that are like killing the giants in the mountaintops of the giant look like this guy's spear. I don't know if that's a stretch or not, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think it is probably related to Rykard. This is clearly aspect of Crucible wings. I mean, this is the exact thing that the Crucible Knights do when you get them down to half their health. So I'm sure that this is going to be probably a spell and not an Ash of War, because the other ones are spells. But I think that's cool. Spells that give you movement tech and kind of give you unique physics are very interesting and cool in this game. That's what I was talking about in my dragon build video. So yeah, I mean, and they don't necessarily show that or have to show that. I mean, I guess when he uses it, he just kind of jumps. So they don't show him cast it, I don't think. Yeah, so, but I don't know. Maybe it is an Ash of War on that one twin blade that he has. Yeah, that could be kind of cool. Man, but I want to be able to use that anytime. That seems really neat. Like, that's fucking dope. This is cool. I think this might be like the very first part of it, or like, maybe not. But this huge open field, that's going to be so fun, brawling in this area, throwing all these daggers and new spells at each other, and just spamming L2 as much as we can. It's going to be so fun. Like, I can't wait to get some new areas, some new PvE enemies for the host to explicitly ignore or kill before you spawn into the world. That's the kind of gameplay I can't wait for. Okay, so we'll just go over this really quickly. That's some kind of new great sword. Maybe Faith? And this armor. The helmet's kind of funny. It does look sort of, yeah, like Greek or Roman, I guess. Especially with the skirt and the cool booties. But yeah, I don't know. The armor, I like the armor that has faces. I think they're kind of funny. Yeah, that's the new Nash fashion. People are saying this is a sleep swamp. I think that might be taking it too far. It might just be an area that is somehow related to Trina or Mikola. And is that Trina? We don't know who that is or why they're sleeping. We don't know why. And then I think that this thing might be one of the mega hard bosses, or maybe not. And although I think Mesmir is probably one of the final bosses, or one of the harder bosses, that is what I think as of right now, is that they are for sure sandbagging a couple of really sweet bosses for later trailers, or, you know, that we won't see. They didn't really show, I remember they didn't really show Malekith or Elven Beast very much in the lead up to the original game at all. Exactly, and Ludwig as well. So I think that that is also really exciting and something to look forward to. From the perspective of PvP, I am definitely looking forward to this. I think adding a multiplier on the interactions, the number of things that you can do, the inventories, the wacky swaps, the cool spell chaining, those are the things I really like about this game. And that sort of infinity of permutations for build making and creating a character, adding on to that and basically getting another, almost, I would say, nearly a half a game or a third of a game on top of the game we already have, is going to be so satisfying as someone who's already put so much time into these games. To have more to do and to learn is going to be super, super hype. The other side of that, and the danger of adding all of this stuff, is of course balance. We all remember how unbalanced the game was when it came out. Yes, it is more balanced now. Will they have tested things sufficiently to bring the current level of polish the game has in PvP to the DLC? Of course not. Not immediately after it comes out. The hope is that, and this might coincide with, maybe we'll get a PvP trailer or some PvP info in the next month or two. The hope is that if they somehow salvage PvP, or they somehow address some of the things that are wrong with it, or give it some love, give us new arenas, maybe increase the player limit, maybe, I think this is even more, this is a lot more unlikely than those things, but fixing some of the things that are bugged and, you know, bad with PvP right now, like hyper armor, some of the tracking, of course, the things with phantom downscaling, blues being summoned too quickly, all of those different things that I think they're less likely to fix, but giving us some new maps, maybe changing the player count, and just, you know, giving us like something like Covenant, rewards, a shop, just some nice chunk that we can have at the start, and then they start patching the game and going into balancing it more. Then maybe we can be assured that the game can last a little bit longer and we'll get some love in the PvP sector of the game. But I'm not necessarily super hopeful for that. Yeah, and they might not even fix Chainsaw. They haven't fixed it yet. So, I mean, what? That's funny. Bad. So I don't know, like, I think that it's going to be really interesting to see the way that the balance changes, because I do not think that the game will be balanced when the DLC comes out, and I do not think that it will be fixed in 1 or 2 patches. I think that it will take them probably 3, 4, 5 patches to adjust everything appropriately. By that time, will people still even want to play the game? Will they ruin it so much that all the people who play through it still despise the PvP to the point where nobody does it and just leaves it, kind of like happened with this game in some ways? Or will there be a response, something that FromSoft does to invigorate PvP in Elden Ring in a way that actually makes people want to stick around, makes people who return to the game want to stay? That's the thing that we really need as a community. And so, yeah, I really hope that they have listened to some of the stuff that people have been saying. G's video, Frosty made video, everybody's been making videos talking about all the balance, the only waifu video that was community made. People have been sending stuff to FromSoft, so have they put in as much direct communication as is going to be needed? Because no matter what we think about From Software, and I think we all think that they are a good company in many ways, one thing we know is that yes, they do listen to feedback from the community, but they do not seem to really test their own game that much. At least not on the PvP side of things. That's a thing that needs an improvement drastically.